So thank you all for joining us for our solar and energy efficiency work group meeting. I'd like to introduce our presenter for the day, Bret Fanshaw, who is Arizona Program Director for Solar United Neighbors. He's actually been on my radar for quite some time as far as bringing in as a speaker, so it worked out really well, and I appreciate his flexibility in jumping in for this month. And so he is going to be talking about Solar United Neighbors, or SUN as they call it, and describing the organization as far as how it serves the various neighborhoods to develop solar co-ops, help Arizona households go solar together with the neighbors. It's a nonprofit organization, so I hope he'll share a little bit more about how it got started. And Bret, I gave everybody your bio, but if you would do us a pleasure of kind of introducing yourself, that would be great. And so with that, I will hand it over to you. I know everybody's very interested not only in what they can do in their neighborhood, and in the case of Janet, who's in New Jersey, maybe that might help her there as well. But also from a city standpoint, I think understanding what kind of options there are for residents when it comes to solar. So I'm looking forward to your presentation. So welcome.
Great, thanks, Ann, and thanks for inviting me to be here. I'm excited to be here. It's a really amazing group of people that you convene, so it's really an honor, and good to see some folks that I already know, and excited to meet others. But yeah, Bret Fanshaw, Arizona Program Director with Solar United Neighbors. I have been in this role for the last couple of years, have been working on environmental and energy issues in Arizona in some way since 2009, but I'm based in Phoenix. And my presentation kind of goes through the organization, some of the information that we provide to consumers, how our programs work, and then talk about an example, go through an example of a recent solar co-op so that folks can kind of visualize it, understand how it works. And then if you want to bring us to your community, you can understand better how to do that and how to contact us. So let me just share my screen.
And Bret, do you want to take questions as you go along, or would you like people to put them in the chat so you can address them as you go along or at the end?
It's going to be hard to see the chat as I go, so maybe take questions at the end, and if folks want to put them in the chat as we go, then we can sort of file through them.
That's great. I will try to keep track of them all.
Yeah, cool. All right, so a little bit about Solar United Neighbors. We're a national nonprofit organization, 501c3. Our mission is to help people go solar, join together, and fight for their energy rights. And so those programs look like the solar co-op programs, where we help people get rooftop solar in groups and help to drive down the cost by doing bulk purchasing for rooftop solar. We help people kind of come together around solar and other related technologies. So a lot of folks that go solar are also interested in and driving electric vehicles. So they're installing EV chargers at the same time they're getting solar. They're interested in battery storage technology at home. So kind of the home, advanced energy technologies is a lot of the things that we focus on, but rooftop solar is sort of the main thing. And then we also do some policy work. So we are paying attention to what's going on at the Corporation Commission, at the legislature, in Congress, et cetera, and letting folks in our network know when it's important to weigh in on some of those topics. So we got started in 2007 pretty organically. So the kid there in the green shirt, his name's Walter, and he is the son of our now executive director, Anya Schoolman. And Walter, like many of us maybe back then, saw the film An Inconvenient Truth and was pretty concerned when he came home about climate change and wanting to do something pretty immediately, and convinced his mom that they had to go solar. And so she started to look into it in their neighborhood in Washington, D.C., and realized, there were kind of confusing options out there, getting different information from different installers and providers. And, this was kind of a nascent time for the the solar installation community, but they thought, hey, if we're having these questions, like everybody else has got to be having these same kind of questions and concerns going solar. And so let's get a bunch of our neighbors to go solar at the same time. We can learn from each other. We can create sort of shared knowledge. And then we can probably drive down the cost a little bit and entice some providers who at the time were not really serving their area to come in and serve their neighborhood because there's the demand there. So that process kind of took a while to figure out, and how to keep people engaged and make it sort of a democratic process. But eventually they got like 40 households in the first co-op to go solar in this neighborhood in DC. And then she started taking calls from folks across the district and then eventually across the region. And we've, refined this basic process kind of ever since into what it is today. So Sun is in 12 states and Washington, D.C., and we have a presence in a few more states than that, but we're doing co-op programs in about 12 states today. So since that time, we've run 300 solar co-ops. We've helped over 6,100 households go solar through the programs, and helped others go solar actually outside of the programs as well individually. We just a couple of weeks ago passed 50 megawatts of rooftop solar installed through the co-op programs. So that was kind of exciting milestone for us. We've facilitated over $130 million worth of rooftop solar investments through the co-op programs, and estimate over the 25-year lifespan of the solar panels that we're going to save those consumers about $212 million over 25 years. As far as carbon goes, the co-ops are offsetting about 1.5 billion pounds of CO2 over that 25-year lifespan. And then we track a lot of statistics, and we have some algorithms to figure out through, I think the Department of Energy has something that we use on creating jobs. And so we estimate that our co-op work has created about 871 solar jobs in the last dozen or so years. And then for this audience, we have worked with dozens of municipal partners across the country on our co-op programs, and I'll kind of explain, how the co-ops work and how that partnership can function. But we've done a lot of work, especially in Florida, in Colorado, in Virginia, and then with a few municipalities in Arizona so far, and we'd like to grow that number. So excited to talk to you more about that today. We started the Arizona program just a couple of years ago, so if you haven't heard of us, that's probably why. So since 2019, we've run 8 co-ops in Arizona. We've helped 235 households go solar through those groups. 1.7 megawatts of rooftop solar, either installed or contracted. $5.2 million worth of solar investments, and our estimates are 7.3 million over 25 years in energy savings. 69 million pounds of CO2 offset over 25 years, and then 33 solar jobs. So just like a fraction of our national impact, but just over the last couple of years, and kind of growing strong. So if you're curious, these are the co-ops that we've run so far across, and really have touched statewide, and have done sort of really big co-ops, and then also really small, more localized co-ops. So we've kind of run the gamut so far, and we're trying to test out, what works in different communities and what the needs are. But we started in the East Valley of our first co-op in 2019, and helped about 20 households go solar there. Phoenix, and then Tucson, until recently, was our largest co-op. Last summer, we had a co-op in Tucson with 165 households in it, and of those, 60 went solar. We did kind of a unique co-op in Portal, Arizona, which is a really tiny community. There's like 800 people that live in Portal, and we had a local volunteer there who was really excited about it, and he got 35 households in Portal to sign up for the co-op. and about half of those ended up going solar. And the only way they were really able to do that was through the co-op to entice a provider to drive all the way out to service them and have sort of the efficiency of scale. I'm going to walk through the Northern Arizona Solar Co-op that we just, well, we're still in the middle of it, but we've completed it from the kind of contract signing standpoint. And so I'm going to walk through that as an example. And that's our sort of biggest one to date. But then we did recent ones in Phoenix, Scottsdale, and then Tucson. We're launching just about a month from now, sort of the second annual Tucson Solar Co-op. So how do the co-ops work? This is the basic sort of timeline. So the first couple months are really about signing people up for the groups, educating people about solar. And we do a lot of what we call solar 101. So we'll do webinars where anybody can join, learn about solar from, from us, a nonprofit organization that's, not really trying to sell them solar. We are the arbiters in between the consumer and the rooftop solar installer, and really work on behalf of the co-op members who sign up. So we're vendor neutral, and that's kind of a unique space to be in. So our goal is to provide independent information to folks as they go through the process. And so when we build up the groups, and I'll show you kind of an example of what the website looks like, it looks kind of like a Kickstarter website where you can see as people sign up how the group has grown and be excited to join it and to surpass the goals. Once we get about critical mass, which is usually about 30 households, we'll send out a request for proposal to local installers and say, hey, we've got 40 households in the group, and we have a pretty comprehensive RFP that the installers fill out to bid on pricing for the co-op. So there's a base price per watt that we ask them to provide, all the equipment that they're going to produce, and if there's price differences between the equipment, what the warranties look like, what their experience in the space is. There's a whole lot of questions. And then what we do is we go back to the co-op, and this is kind of a unique thing that Solar United Neighbors does, is we have a selection committee of the co-op members, and they are the ones that pick the installer. So a lot of solarized programs that are out there have kind of like pre-selected the installation company, and when folks sign up, they just sort of are set with whatever provider has been chosen. But in our case, the decision for the installer is put on the people that are actually going to install solar on their homes at the end of the day. And we find that folks that especially participate in that selection process are at the end of the day a lot more likely to end up going solar. I think that's another important thing to note, is that when someone signs up for the co-op, it's free to join. There's no requirement to go solar at the end of the day. You can do it just to get information. There's basically no cost for somebody to join. So once the installer is selected by the group, we then will pass the list on to that selected installer, and only that selected installer. We don't sell the list to other folks or stuff like that. And then they'll work through contacting everyone, giving them a customized proposal based on the pricing that they bid in. And we hold them accountable to that. So there's transparent price sheet that's sent out to co-op participants that say, you're going to be offered a system at this price per watt. These are the types of panels. If you want to upgrade, it's this cost. If you have, sometimes there are adders, like if you have a 2-story house, there's a $500 fee. And we put all those fees kind of up front. So when folks get a proposal in front of them, they can go back to that price sheet and compare and say, okay, I'm getting exactly everything that I expected. And if it's off, then they can come to us and say, hey, this seems off. And then we can advocate on their behalf or figure out what's going on. So we do a lot of kind of like handholding and project management between the customers and the installers. We don't just sort of pass the list off and say, hey, good luck, see you later. We want to see people be successful through the process. So from there, when folks sit down with the installer, they're going to be presented with a proposal based on their energy usage, their roof space, their budget, and from there they can decide whether to sign a contract or not. One thing that we are always transparent about is that we do have a fee that's associated with the co-op that helps us as a nonprofit to be able to fund the work to do the outreach, to organize the co-op. And that fee is $600 per signed contract, and that comes from the installer. So we ask them to build that into the co-op pricing. So folks are still getting a discounted price through the co-op, and then we're getting a small fee back for every contract that's signed from the installer. And then from there, folks install the systems just like they're an individual rooftop solar customer. So they'll go through the regular channels of working with the installer to get permitting from the city, to get interconnection from the utility, all of that stuff. There's nothing unique in our model about, sharing energy or anything like that. And so sometimes it's a little confusing when we say co-op, because it's really kind of like a buyer's club for rooftop solar is maybe a better way to think about it. So that's essentially the process. So just to reiterate, the co-op members in our case are the ones that pick the installer. And this can be good for our municipal partners because it takes away the burden of kind of selecting a provider and going through a super official, maybe bureaucratic RFP process, where Solar United Neighbors handles the RFP process. We present the information to people that are participating, and they are the ones going to pay for it and going to put it on their roof. So they're the ones that are picking the company up front. And these are some of the things that they will look at. And if folks want to, at the end of this presentation, I can scroll through or email out even a sample RFP so that you can see exactly what we ask installers when they bid into the project. It's pretty, I think it's pretty comprehensive. So I want to share just a little bit of the educational material and just putting some things in context of what we share with folks that come to our Solar 101s or ask us questions. And then I'll go through an example of the Northern Arizona Solar Co-op. So this is just, when people come to us, they may know nothing about how solar works or how any of this stuff works. So I don't need to go through this with this crowd, but just to show you, this is an example of some of our education on, here's typically how the solar array is going to be set up and the type of equipment that you're going to be purchasing when you install solar on your home. We also talk to folks about cost and price, and so, I think folks generally know the cost of solar has come down over the last few years. As far as rooftop solar goes, it's plateaued out a bit over the last few years, but our co-op pricing is still, pretty competitive, and it makes sense based on the model. But every co-op, is different, so we can't promise people exactly how much they're going to get a discount through the program, but in general, you can see something like 15 to 20% below market is what a lot of folks end up getting when they go solar through one of our co-ops. And so we try to track that information. Part of that is just based on how solar is, what the cost of solar to installers is these days and how that has changed over time. So a lot of the cost of solar now is under sort of what you would call soft costs. And a lot of that cost depends on the company, but can be marketing. And so, spending ads to find leads and paying door knockers to find people and all of that stuff. Whereas, if the installer wins the bid for a co-op, they're presented with, maybe 100 households that are excited about solar, have been educated about it, have read our emails, gone to our webinar, maybe they've talked to one of us on the phone, and then we pre-qualify folks by doing satellite reviews when they sign up. And so we'll screen out folks that are just going to be an easy no for the installer, so that they're not wasting their time. So they can pass all of those sort of efficiencies on to co-op members, in addition to knowing that you can buy more equipment in bulk and probably save money that way by knowing you have a lot of good leads in the pipeline. So we also talked to folks about incentives. So again, folks here know this stuff, but we talk to folks about how the federal tax credit is structured, how it can benefit them when they go solar, how it's phasing out right now. This could change based on some conversations in Congress, but we'll update this if that happens. And then we also do mention the Arizona state tax credit as well. And so then we do try to provide folks with some sample pricing and to give folks an idea kind of upfront of like, okay, if you get a proposal in hand, how much is solar going to cost you? What can the credits, look like? And then, I would say like a fair to conservative estimate on electricity savings from the utilities. So I know that there's some folks here from APS, and we've actually talked to some folks at APS about this. But what is under the current rate structure? How long could someone expect to pay off their solar? And our estimate is something around like 10 to 12 years right now. It depends on the size of the system, depends how you use energy, it depends on a whole sort of range of factors. But that's kind of what we are making sure that people are set up to understand, and that they can still, at the end of the day, come out ahead if it's, if it's going to be a long-term investment for them. So want to walk through an example of a recent co-op that was really successful. It's our most successful Arizona solar co-op to date, and I think speaks to how we can work well with municipal partners to kind of meet the goals of our program and the goals that folks have set, or especially around sustainability. So back in January, we launched the Northern Arizona Solar Co-op, and our community partners were the city of Flagstaff, the city of Sedona, and Coconino County. And our initial goal when we launched was to get 100 households to sign up this spring. So when we were putting materials out there and sort of talking to folks about it, that was our goal, is to get 100 people to sign up. We actually initially were thinking of doing a Flagstaff solar co-op, and we talked to Nicole Antonopoulos at the city of Flagstaff, and she was like, hey, we should make this a regional thing. Like, let's get Sedona involved, let's get Coconino County involved. And so we talked to those folks, and so I have to give Nicole a lot of credit for sort of thinking bigger and thinking more collaboratively about it. And I think that was pretty successful. We did a press release when we started the co-op, and so that's some of our process is to generate some media attention. And so we had quotes from Flagstaff Mayor, City of Sedona, Coconino County about the program and how excited they were about it. We got an article in the Arizona Daily Sun, which helped to drive a bunch of people to sign up, and that's generally how we see good participation in our co-ops is there's a good news story about it. We also worked through, social media channels, newsletters from the city sustainability departments. There were community groups that kind of got the word out, let people know that they could sign up. We have yard signs we can put out. So there's like a whole, range of things, and in different places, different things work better than others, and we actually keep track of that. So I have something at the end which might be interesting to folks on that score. The Solar 101 webinars I mentioned, we held 4 of those for this co-op, kind of just at different intervals along the way. We had 83 total people that joined us for those, and again, we kind of walked through, how does solar work? How much does it cost? How can it save me money? And how can I get involved in the co-op? And so then our installer selection for Northern Arizona, we, with just about a month in, we had 87 households signed up, which was awesome. So we were almost at our goal for the whole co-op at that point. And so we released the RFP out to our installer list, and we got 6 bids in from different Arizona solar installers. Of those 87 co-op members, we had 16 participate on the selection committee, And, we used to do these like in people's living rooms or at restaurants. This one, we've been doing them on Zoom for the last, 18 months, as you can imagine. So we had this one on Zoom as well, and walk them through this sort of mega spreadsheet of, here are the 6 bids. We're trying to compare apples to apples as much as we can on, pricing, equipment offerings, warranties, staffing size and capacity for handling a group of this size, et cetera. And so ultimately, Rooftop Solar was the installer selected by this group. It's a Flagstaff-based solar installation company. I think they also have an office in San Diego. So the deadline was March 31st. So we had from mid-January through the end of March for folks to sign up for this group. This is a screenshot of the website. So when folks go to check out the co-op, they can sort of read information about joining a webinar or just signing up for the co-op. This is what it looks like when the co-op is over. So that join the waitlist button would say join the co-op when it's live. And the bar above it tracks, how far are we along to what our goal is. And we ended up with this group with 220, actually 26 households. One was a duplicate. So that more than doubled the initial goal that we had when we first set out, and was really exciting. So this is how the co-op ended up. If you're a numbers person, this is your slide. But we ended up again with 226 households. We had 88 signed contracts after a couple months of outreach from the installer to that group. It was a large group, so they had to do a lot of work to reach out to folks and contact them. And actually, they had to hire additional folks to be able to handle it. We were told recently that the company that was selected had something like 50 contracts in 2020, and so so just through this co-op, they got 88. So they had to sort of increase their capacity there. 5 of those contracts so far have fallen through just after on-site sort of technical analysis, which can happen. And so far we've got 10 that are completed of this group. We've got another 73 to go that we project. And this group's going to install right around 648 kilowatts of rooftop solar, probably by the end of the year, if not into early next year when it'll be completed. The total contracts totaled 1.8 million. We estimate energy savings for this group to be something like 3.2 million over 25 years. The 37% conversion rate, so that's 83 contracts over 226, maybe it's 88, I can't remember. But that's pretty good. Like our conversion rate nationally is something like 25. And so this group was well above that. And then our Arizona co-ops in general have been around 35 to 40%. So for whatever reason in Arizona, the folks that sign up for these are pretty ready to go. 7.8 average kW per household. This group priced out at something like $2.87 a watt. Average household contract was around $22,000 before tax credits. And we estimate the average energy savings of something around $39,000 over 25 years. Since this is the Sustainable Cities Network, we also track carbon offsets. And so we estimate over 25 years, something like 25.6 million pounds of CO2 will be offset. It's a big number. What does that mean? So if you go to the EPA website and put that in, these are some of the equivalents. It's like any one of these things is the impact, the 25-year impact of just this one solar co-op. So 64, rail cars worth of coal, or powering 2,100 homes for a year. So there's a lot of ways to sort of carve it up. And how folks heard about this group. So if we're thinking about, how do we get the word out and actually get people to sign up and get people to go solar? Most people found us through a friend, so word of mouth was the biggest way. And then the city of Flagstaff doing promotion, social media, and traditional news were kind of the other ways that folks signed up. And then as far as conversion rates go, we had 71% of folks that signed up reading the Daily Sun article ended up signing a contract. Half of the folks that signed up hearing from City of Flagstaff ended up signing a contract. So those kind of bumped the overall numbers up a bit. But there's a lot of cool ways to kind of look at this stuff. And then these are all the signed contracts in the Northern Arizona solar co-ops. You can kind of see it visually across the region. So mostly centered in Flagstaff. Actually, I have a zoomed in on that section as well. So kind of all across town. It's pretty interesting. All right, I'm almost done, and then would love to sort of hear feedback and questions. But if you think this is really cool, if you want to work with us on a co-op, we're kind of full up for this year. But if you want to work on one with us for next year, that would be great. My email's in the next slide. I think we do a good job helping folks go solar. In your community, we can walk them through the process and help to meet local sustainability goals. And that was part of the driver for City of Flagstaff. They just set a pretty ambitious climate action plan into place. They are trying to get like a megawatt of rooftop solar per year for like the next 8 years or something like that. And so our 650 kilowatt co-op is really going to help them to kind of get there in this first year going forward. And then just to reiterate, we're vendor neutral. So this allows municipalities to kind of step away from having to pick a solar company to be doing this type of work. We put that decision, an informed decision, on to the co-op members who participate. And then, we can all share in the success. So like the 25.5 million tons of CO2 offset, that's something that all of us are celebrating together with our Northern Arizona partners. So we've worked with, I mentioned all the Northern Arizona folks. We also worked with City of Scottsdale Green Building Program. Lori, who I know is on, thank you so much. I haven't really talked about Scottsdale at all today, but we are kind of going through that co-op right now. And then City of Phoenix helped to get out a word on this year's solar co-op in an April water bill from the city, and that drove a bunch of folks to sign up initially. So there's good examples of kind of putting your name on it and really going in, and there's other ways to help facilitate this conversation as well, and we kind of accept that whole scale. Okay, that's it. Thanks, Anne, so much for having me. I'm excited to sort of take any questions and see what folks think.
Great. Thank you so much, Bret. I really appreciate it. I learned a lot because I didn't know half of what you had talked about. So this is really great information. We did get several questions via the chat. I'm going to take Scott's first, and then I'm going to let Janet Bunchman ask hers because she had direct messaged me on those. And Scott, you had asked, what made certain co-ops more successful than others? Better messaging, more marketing, or something else?
Yeah, that's a great question. I mean, I think it's a combination. So we often find if we can get one or two really good media stories about the co-op up front, that can really help to drive folks to sign up. So because once they've signed up, then they can tell their friends and neighbors about it and can sign up that way. So last summer when we did the Tucson Solar Co-op, we got a really great story in the Daily Star, and we got about 50 households to sign up within like 48 hours of that story going up. So if we didn't have that story, like we wouldn't have had all of those folks, at least initially. I think having volunteers and folks invested in it can help as well. So like the portal example was pretty much all volunteer driven. And then definitely working in, in this context, like having the cities as partners for the Northern Arizona group, we had many conversations with Flagstaff and then the other partners leading up to that, where they felt comfortable, working with us and putting their name on it. And so I think having the association there does help people feel comfortable about signing up and knowing that that this is something worthy of their time. So it's a whole combination of things. And sometimes we whiff. Sometimes we only get like 30 or 40 households to sign up, and that's what it is. And then we just sort of figure out for next time.
So is there an ideal number of residents that you have that you want to sign up, or does it vary community by community?
Yeah, I think it depends. Like we, I think at least 40 or 50 is what you need for it to sort of make sense to spend the time doing it. And then probably not more than 200 or 250, because like Northern Arizona, for example, we're running into some capacity issues with the installer, where we have got 225 members. They signed more contracts than they even signed last year. And so there's a little bit of some bottleneck, like communication things going on that we're having to work through. And so in the future, we just had a powwow with all the folks around this. So that's why I know I'm talking about this, but in the future, we might cap participation in certain markets so that people have a good experience and those bottlenecks aren't there. So It kind of depends.
And this is Lori. I wonder if I could comment on this. So Bret was great. He came to Scottsdale, and it was a particularly busy time for both me and Anthony Floyd. So we just posted it on the Green Buildings website, and Bret didn't bother us. He just went out and did all this great stuff. So I'm looking forward to a time in the future where, Scottsdale can more actively promote it and get, even more participants. And I think another thing I've learned is there are some publications such as The Independent that's in most of our communities that's interested in these types of topics. So that might be an avenue. So we're looking forward in the future to working with Bret again, because he just did all the work and we didn't have to do anything. It's great.
It's always good when you have somebody doing the work, right?
That's right. So thanks, Bret.
Yeah, that's kind of what we say is like, if you can just help us get the word out, we can do pretty much everything else.
Yeah, wonderful. I'm going to go over to Janet because she has several questions. And Janet, if you could just maybe ask one or two, and then we'll go over to a couple of the other ones that are in the chat. We can always circle back on.
Yeah, just one. Bret, great job. I'm interested from a standpoint of, well, first of all, do you work in New Jersey at all? You mentioned so many 12 states.
New Jersey is a funny state for us. We have had a program, but we don't have an active one.
Okay. Second of all, you seem to be working with communities, the Flagstaff, the Northern, and municipalities. Do you have target marketing? I'm interested in your demographics, for example. Do you have any demographics on who actually signs up for your co-ops? Is it younger families, older families, seniors, what? Reason I'm asking, it's like we have a big county with 15 or 16 55 and over communities, of which, it's all electric. A lot of these homes are electric, older housing stock. Our rates here for the utilities are 13.5 cents per kilowatt hour average. So it seems natural to me to do something like this in a co-op sense. But do you have any targets that you do for, I mean, you have government, you have municipalities. What about any experience with seniors, community living type of places like a Sun Lakes?
Yeah, that's a good question. We haven't done partnerships with any of the retirement areas yet. It's something I'd be interested in exploring. I mean, people are, as you know, or it sounds like, people are in just a lot of different situations there. Like, an investment that's not going to pay off for 10 or 15 years may not make sense
Right.
to some
Yeah,
folks.
if you're 80, but maybe when you're 55, it's a different.
Sure.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, and then there are some issues, like I think people have stumbled into issues with, we're sort of like advising folks about financing and about kind of staying away from leasing, these days, because you can typically finance and get a better deal on your loan payment than you can getting locked into kind of a long-term lease that's going to make it a headache for you to sell your house down the road or something like that. So we don't track, like when people sign up, we don't ask them for a lot of demographic data like that.
Okay.
We've talked about doing that. So most of what we have is anecdotal. We do ask folks if they finance the system or not. So we have some of that information.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks. We have a question from Judith Anderson asking what relationship, if any, do co-op members or Sun have with the existing utilities? Are any members selling surplus energy back into the grid?
Yeah, so, well, I guess I'll take the second question first. So all the co-op members sell or get credits back into the grid, the same as just a regular individual household that goes solar on their own would. So if the utility provides, APS or TEP, for example, provides the export rate credit, those folks are getting that. With SRP, folks are getting the rate structure that they sign up for. And we try based on where we're doing the co-op to provide some information about, these are the rate plans you're going to be offered. Here's how they're different. Here are some things to think about when you're thinking about, demand charges or, with just how net metering has changed in Arizona, it's complicated now more so than other states. And so we do try to provide some of that education for folks. As far as Sun's relationship with existing utilities, I serve on APS's customer working group that meets once a month. And so it's a bunch of kind of consumer advocate organizations that APS has convened that provides feedback on sort of different things. So like over this last year, there's been a bill redesign project that we've been working on, and sort of different ways that folks are being reached out to in the community. So, and then, so that would be, we don't have an active relationship with SRP, but before I took this role, I served on the advisory committee for the 2035 sustainability goals at SRP. So familiar with some folks there too.
Great.
And happy to chat with anybody from the utilities if you want to chat. So definitely hit me up.
Wonderful. And Derek, who's with El Mirage, had a question as far as, did any of the cities that were associated have any of their own facilities add solar through the co-op? Is that an option?
That's a good question. Not that I know of, but it wouldn't be out of the question. So sometimes it depends on the facility, because the co-op programs are generally geared towards, residential or maybe like small commercial. So if you have like a small, home business or maybe a restaurant or something like that. But when you get into, pricing for larger facilities, we wouldn't expect, for example, like the installer to be wedded to the co-op bid. But if you had somebody signed up, and we come across this sometimes with like churches or larger folks that sign up, where maybe their pricing should actually be cheaper because they're going to install like a 50 kilowatt system or 100 kilowatt system. So what we generally say to folks in that space is like, hey, sign up for the co-op, we'll note it for the installer, and you can at least talk to them and get pricing, but it might be different from what has been bidded into the group, which is sort of more geared towards residential. We could use the model. We are trying to do different pilot projects. And so we could, in theory, use the model to say you have, 5 shitty buildings you want to put solar on. We could help you put an RFP together, review, get bids out, review bids, and walk through that. So that could be something we could discuss.
That's good. Janet, did you have another question you wanted to ask?
I guess when you do an RFP, how does the solar provider, like he takes like a 5 kW system and there's all this, how does he spread his costs? Is it based on size? Is it based on, I'm just saying that, I'm 5, somebody else is 4, somebody else is 8. How does that really work? And then do you have any, when you do your average cost, do you have anything that compares, okay, here's the average of 7 to what you would have paid, to show the benefits of the co-op? How does that cost spreading work with the RFPs?
Yeah, great question. So we allow for installers to price in slightly different ways. So what I mean by that is most of them will say, we won't install less than, some of them, we won't install less than 3 kilowatts, let's say. And then they'll have a price for 3 to, 8 kilowatts or 3 to 7 kilowatts. And then they'll have a different price for 8 to 8+ kilowatts, or some of them are even more gradient than that. Like, this is the price for 3 to 6 kW, this is the price for 7 to 10 kW, and this is the price for 10+. And you're like, and it costs more per watt the smaller the system is, to make up for the, the labor and the inverter costs and things like that. So, so we allow for that sort of scaled pricing in the bids.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
We have a couple of additional questions in the chat. One's from Grace, who is with the city of Tempe, asking, in the Northern Arizona co-op, are most of the systems financed over 20 years or owned outright? Is there a pre-approval process with one or more of the banks? Does Sun work with the co-op members on the financing piece?
Yeah, that's a great question. So in the Northern Arizona co-op, I have to see how many are financed or not. I can't remember, but the installer in that case, Rooftop Solar, has a partnership with a credit union. I think it's actually Puget Sound Credit Union, which is, it's a little funny that it's like Puget Sound, but they have come up with a product that they kind of work with through them that they feel is good, and then they offer that to co-op members. Other installers have similar relationships. So in Tucson, we worked with Technicians for Sustainability, and they have a product that they use through the Tucson Old Pueblo Credit Union that they've kind of developed with them. So so different installers have different products, and some of them are better than others. Like, some of the installers make a lot of money because it's easy to finance through the installer, but it's kind of like in financing through like your car dealership, where like they make a lot on dealer fees, and they sort of advertise low interest rates, but there's like a big dealer fee up front to sort of pay for that low interest rate. And so we kind of warn people like, hey, read the fine print, like understand what you're getting into, look at your options. And there's other things out there that you could do. Like, you can take a home equity line of credit. You can, there's other ways to do it. So, but most people that go solar through the co-ops do finance. So it's something that we do talk about. We have the option for folks that go solar through the co-ops can also get a quote from Clean Energy Credit Union, which is kind of a newer national financing firm that's sort of focused on helping people get loans for solar.
Great. Wonderful. Kathleen Monroe mentioned in the chat, are installers mentioning any supply chain or labor disruptions slowing installation? Do you have a time commitment for completion? I know COVID's created a lot of different problems. And so I'm wondering how that's, to her question, how has that impacted your co-op efforts as well?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We try to learn a little bit up front about when they bid. We say, hey, are you experiencing any issues? Or like, what is your supply like right now on different types of equipment? And because we're doing co-ops kind of across the country in different markets, sometimes we can see, and like, for example, Tesla Powerwalls, like really hard to get right now. Like you can't get one. And so we ask installers like, hey, we know that we're seeing disruptions in that space. Like, do you have a supply, or do you have options for people that are interested in storage that maybe you have access to? And so we try to get some of that information up front, so when people select the company. But so yeah, so there have been disruptions, nothing too major. Like I think in our Scottsdale co-op, they sold out of one of the panels that they were offering. And so then we had a conversation with them about an appropriate replacement panel that we felt met the same specs, and we agreed was like a fair price for that. So sometimes there's flexibility on that side where we say, hey, like, we know this wasn't in the bid, but we still want people to go solar, and most people don't care if it's like this panel or the other panel, and some people do, but we try to work through those things. Labor disruptions, I don't know. That's a good question. There's
right.
Obviously that's disrupted everywhere right now.
Yeah.
So yeah,
exactly.
I'm sure there have been.
All right. Well, Bret, we are at time, and I know there are probably a few more questions out there. So if anybody would like to put them in the chat, we can certainly forward those to him and connect you. I will share your contact information with everyone. And if you are comfortable in me sharing your PowerPoint, if you could send that to me in a PDF form, I'll make sure to post it online. Along with the video and I found the Q&A very helpful, so I'll probably keep that as part of the presentation if you're comfortable with that.
Sounds good.
Wonderful. Well, thank you, and yeah, thank you very much. Everybody will give you the virtual round of applause. It was very informative, and I hope we can bring you back at some point so you can provide an update on how your co-op is progressing, probably throughout Arizona and maybe New Jersey in the case of Janet.
Sounds good.
Wonderful.
Thank you so much for having me. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. It was long overdue. So thank you for joining us today.